You're standing in a stone corridor. Cold. Silent. The kind of silence that comes after screaming stops. On the floor, there's a letter, ink smeared with dirt, maybe blood. It was never sent. The man who wrote it died before dawn, his hands still reaching for the seal. He was 23. He had a name, a mother, a promise to come home. But history doesn't remember his name. It remembers the wall he died defending. And if you scroll past this story, you let that silence win. You let his last breath dissolve into nothing. So stop, just for a moment. Because what happened on that island in 1522 wasn't just a battle. It was 500 men choosing to stand when every instinct screamed run. It was faith tested by cannon fire. It was hope buried under rubble and dug out again with bare hands. This is not a story about victory. This is a story about the cost of not surrendering. And you need to hear it. The year is 1522. The Mediterranean is burning, not with fire, but with ambition. The Ottoman Empire, the greatest military power on earth, has set its sights on a small island. Rhodes, a rocky fortress floating in the Aegean Sea. To most, it's just another stronghold. But to Suleiman the Magnificent, the young sultan hungry to prove his name, Rhodes is a thorn in his side. A Christian fortress blocking his route to the west. A symbol of resistance that must fall. And so, he gathers an army. 40,000 soldiers. The finest warriors of the empire. Janissaries who have never known defeat. Engineers who can reduce mountains to dust. A fleet so vast it blocks out the horizon. This is not a siege. This is annihilation waiting to happen. But inside the walls of Rhodes, something impossible is brewing. 500 knights. The Knights Hospitaller. Warrior monks who took vows to defend the faith and the sick. They are outnumbered 80 to 1. They have no reinforcements coming. No escape route. No reason to believe they can survive. But they have something the Ottomans don't expect. They have a leader named Philippe Villiers de l'Alado, a grandmaster who looks at his men and tells them the truth. We will not win, but we will not break. And so, they prepare, not for victory, for endurance. August 1522, the Ottoman fleet arrives. Ships so numerous they darken the water. Soldiers pour onto the beaches like a flood. Suleiman himself watches from his command tent, confident this will be over in weeks. His engineers begin digging trenches, setting up siege towers, wheeling forward the cannons. These are not ordinary cannons. These are monsters. Bronze giants that can hurl stone balls weighing 300 pounds. When they fire, the ground shakes. When they hit, walls crumble. And they fire without mercy. The bombardment begins. Day after day, night after night. The roar never stops. The walls of Rhodes, thick and ancient, start to crack. Dust fills the air. Stone rains down on the defenders. The knights don't have the firepower to match the Ottomans. They don't have the numbers, but they have stubbornness. Every time a section of wall collapses, they rebuild it. With rubble, with wood, with anything they can find. They work through the night, under fire, knowing that by dawn the cannons will tear it all down again. And still, they rebuild. The Ottomans launch their first assault. Janissaries, elite soldiers trained from childhood, storm the breaches. They come in waves, shields raised, swords flashing. The knights meet them in the rubble, hand to hand, blade to blade. No room for formations, no room for strategy, just survival. The knights are older, fewer, but they fight like men who have nothing left to lose. They hold the breach, barely. Bodies pile up on both sides. The Ottomans retreat, surprised. This was supposed to be easy. Suleiman is not pleased.
Easy now.
He orders more cannons.
We need more stone up here, hurry!
He sends sappers to dig tunnels under the walls, packing them with gunpowder. The idea is simple. Blow the foundations. Bring the walls down from below. The knights hear the digging. They dig counter tunnels. Underground battles erupt in the darkness. Men fighting in narrow, collapsing spaces. Suffocating, buried alive. It's a war beneath the war, and it's just as brutal. Weeks pass. The walls continue to crumble. The knights continue to rebuild. It becomes a rhythm, a terrible, exhausting rhythm. Cannon fire, collapse, rebuild, assault, defend, repeat. The knights are aging before their own eyes. Men in their 30s look 50. Men in their 50s can barely stand. But they stand anyway. Because what else is there to do? Surrender means death. Fighting means death. But at least fighting means choosing how you die. Inside Rhodes, the city is transforming into a graveyard. Streets that once bustled with merchants and pilgrims are now silent except for the distant thunder of cannons. Houses are abandoned. Churches become hospitals. The wounded fill every available space. Monks who once copied manuscripts now tie tourniquets. Priests who once heard confessions now dig graves. This is what siege warfare does. It doesn't just destroy walls. It destroys worlds. The knights know they're running out of time. Supplies dwindle. The grain stores are half empty. The wine is rationed. Even water, something the island once had in abundance, is becoming precious. The Ottomans have cut off the wells outside the walls. Inside, the cisterns are draining. Mathematics becomes cruel. How many men can you feed with what's left? How long can 500 knights hold against 40,000 soldiers when they're weak from hunger? Villiers de l'Isle walks the walls every night. He speaks to his men, listens to their fears, shares their bread. He knows what historians will never write. That battles are not won by strategy alone. They're won by the man who keeps fighting when his body screams to stop. By the soldier who lifts the stone one more time. By the knight who stands watch even though he hasn't slept in 2 days. Leadership, he understands, is not about grand speeches. It's about being present in the suffering. September arrives. The siege enters its second month. The Ottomans have settled into a grim determination. They build more siege engines. They dig more tunnels. They rotate fresh troops to the front while the knights have no such luxury. Every man fights. Every man bleeds. There are no reserves. No second line. When a knight falls, the gap in the wall gets a little wider. The defense gets a little thinner. And everyone knows it. The Ottomans try a new tactic. They build massive siege towers. Wooden fortresses on wheels, tall enough to overlook the walls. From these towers, archers rain arrows down on the defenders. The knights have nowhere to hide. They fashion shields from broken doors. They move in short, desperate sprints from cover to cover. Men die from arrows while trying to repair walls. The siege has become a slow execution. But the knights adapt. They always adapt. They build higher barricades. They angle shields to deflect arrows. They learn to time their movements between volleys. They study the Ottoman patterns and exploit the gaps. War, they discover, is a conversation. The enemy makes a move. You respond. They adjust. You counter-adjust. It's a dance, except the music is screaming and the floor is made of corpses. October. 3 months into the siege. The city is unrecognizable. Entire sections of wall have been reduced to rubble. The bastions that once stood proud are now jagged stumps. The streets are cratered from tunnel collapses. Buildings near the walls have been demolished to provide stone for repairs. Rhodes is cannibalizing itself to survive. And still, the knights hold. The Ottomans are bleeding too. Thousands of soldiers have died in the assaults. Disease has spread through their camps. Dysentery, fever, the invisible killers that follow armies. Suleiman's officers begin to whisper. This is taking too long, costing too much. The Sultan is young. This is his first major campaign. A failure here would be catastrophic. But he cannot appear weak. So the siege continues. Not because victory is close, but because retreat is unthinkable. Inside the city, the defenders face a different enemy. Despair. It creeps into the quiet moments. When a man sits down to rest and realizes he might not have the strength to stand again. When a knight looks at his sword and wonders if he has one more fight left in him. When the sun sets and everyone counts who's missing from the evening meal. Despair doesn't announce itself. It simply settles over you like dust. Villiers de l'Isle gathers his knights. They meet in the chapel. The Grand Master speaks plainly. We are dying. We all know this. The question is not if we fall. The question is what we do with the time we have left. Do we make them pay for every inch? Do we hold long enough that Europe hears our story? Do we prove that faith and courage mean something? The knights don't cheer. They don't need to. They simply nod. And that's enough. November, the 4th month. Winter is approaching. The winds grow cold. Rain turns the battlefield to mud. The Ottoman camps struggle with the weather. Tents flood. Supplies rot. The men, used to warmer climates, shiver through the nights. The siege that was supposed to last weeks has become a test of endurance for both sides. And neither side can afford to lose. The Ottomans launch another massive assault, perhaps the largest yet. Thousands of soldiers storm the walls simultaneously at multiple points. The idea is to overwhelm the defenders, spread them too thin, find the breaking point. The knights know this is the moment. If they fail here, it's over. So they fight with everything left. Old men swing swords like they're young again. Wounded knights leave their beds to join the defense. Even the non-combatants, the cooks and servants, grab whatever weapons they can find. The battle lasts all day, sunrise to sunset. The walls change hands. 3 times. Janissaries plant their flags on the ramparts. Knights tear them down. The fighting is so intense that men forget to be afraid. There's no time for fear. Only action. Strike. Block. Move. Survive. 1 more second. 1 more minute. 1 more hour. The human body is capable of extraordinary things when death is the alternative. As darkness falls, the Ottomans retreat. Again. The knights have held. Again. But this time, everyone knows the truth. There won't be many more defenses like this. The knights are finished. Bodies lie everywhere. The walls are gone in places. The breaches are too wide to repair. The next assault will succeed. It's mathematics. Cruel, simple mathematics. Suleiman knows it too. But he also knows his men are exhausted. His supplies are running low. Winter is here. The weather will only get worse. And his reputation has already suffered. For months to take one small fortress. For months of losses. For months of humiliation. He makes a decision. He will offer terms. Generous terms. He will allow the knights to leave with honor. Not because he's merciful, but because ending this siege, even without total victory, is better than continuing it into winter. The offer arrives. The knights can leave. They can take their weapons, their flags, their wounded, their dignity. In exchange, Rhodes becomes Ottoman. Villiers de El Al-Adam reads the terms. He looks at his men. These aren't soldiers anymore. They're ghosts, held together by will and nothing else. He has a choice. Fight to the last man. Die gloriously. Be remembered as martyrs. Or accept the terms. Live. Fight another day. He chooses life. Not because it's easier, but because these men have earned the right to see another sunrise. December 1522. After 4 months of hell, the gates of Rhodes open. The knights march out. They're fewer than 200 now. 300 dead. 102 wounded to walk. But those who can march do so with their heads high. Their armor dented. Their flags torn. But their spirits unbroken. They pass through Ottoman lines. Soldiers on both sides stand in silence. There's a strange respect in the air. These men fought well. Both sides know it. Suleiman watches from his tent. He later writes that it pained him to expel such brave warriors. But history is not written by the compassionate. It's written by the victorious. He takes Rhodes. But the cost was higher than anyone expected. And the knights, though defeated, walk away with something more valuable than victory. They walk away with proof that courage matters, that faith endures, that impossible odds are just numbers, and numbers don't account for the human heart. The knights eventually settle in Malta. There, decades later, they will face the Ottomans again in another impossible siege. And once again, they will hold. But that's another story. This story is about Rhodes. About 4 months in 1522, when 500 men said no to an empire. When walls that should have fallen in days held for months. When mathematics met willpower and willpower won. The letter on the stone floor was never sent home. The young man who wrote it never saw his mother again. His name is lost to history. But his choice, the choice to stand when running made more sense, that choice echoes through time. It echoes in every person who faces impossible odds. In every moment when giving up would be easier. In every battle where the outcome seems decided before it begins. Because Rhodes teaches us something that cannot be found in textbooks. It teaches us that defeat and failure are not the same thing. The knights lost Rhodes. That's defeat. But they didn't fail. Failure would have been surrendering on day one. Failure would have been not trying. Failure would have been letting fear win. They lost their home, but they kept their honor. And sometimes, honor is the only victory that matters. 500 years later, we remember. We remember the walls that held when they shouldn't have. We remember the knights who fought when logic said stop. We remember the siege that became a legend, not because of who won, but because of what it cost, because of what it proved. That courage is not about being unafraid. It's about being terrified and standing anyway. That faith is not about knowing you'll win. It's about fighting even when you know you'll lose. That honor is not a prize you claim. It's a choice you make, every single day, until the day you can't make it anymore. The walls of Rhodes eventually fell. Stone always crumbles. Metal always rusts. But the story of those who defended them, that never dies. It lives in every act of defiance, in every moment of courage, in every choice to stand when sitting would be easier. The Ottomans took the island, but the knights took something the Ottomans could never conquer. They took their place in history, not as victors, but as something better, as proof that the human spirit, when tested to its absolute limit, does not break. It bends, it bleeds, it suffers, but it does not break. And that, more than any military victory, is why we remember Rhodes. Why we must remember Rhodes. Why this story, told and retold across centuries, still matters. Because the real battle was never about the walls. It was about what those walls represented. Hope, faith, defiance, the refusal to accept that might makes right. And in that battle, the one that matters most, the knights never lost. They're still winning. Every time their story is told, every time someone hears about 500 against 40,000 and thinks, maybe I can face my impossible too. That's the victory. That's the legacy. That's Rhodes.